Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories like these. Now, let's get into today's story video. Ada for telling my sister to stop acting as if my fiancé were her son's dad. My 24 female sister, 23 female, gave birth to my nephew Joe during her freshman year of college. She has always loathed the notion of my nephew growing up without a father figure. And since our only brother is 17 and our father died away 10 years ago, she dated wildly for a time and exposed him to a number of males. I met my now fiancé, Gabriel, 28M, 3 years ago. He's incredibly kind and loves my family. He's financially solid and fantastic with kids. He has a lot of nephews of his own, and he comes from a good, huge family. We've agreed not to have children, and if anything happens to my sister or a couple of Gabe's siblings, we're supposed to be their legal guardians. For the past year, my sister has grown accustomed to pushing Joe around Gabe. She always invites him to my nephew's activities, which is fine, but she acts as if Gabe were her guest and I'm his plus one, not otherwise, plus my brother used to be the one who got invited and he's no longer. She asks Gabe to drive her and Joe to places, and my mom commented on how they look like a family when he does it. She jokes about how much of neither Gabe nor I am comfortable with this. He doesn't know how to ignore it without hurting their emotions. My mother has repeatedly informed my sister that this is wrong, but my sister constantly gets angry and claims that Joe picked him and that it's not her fault. Things blew out last weekend when Joe asked Gabriel if he could call him dad since mom said it was all right. My sister was gazing at them with the greatest grin on her face, and I could see my mom and brother were waiting for his response. Neither of them agree with it too. He seated Joe on his knee and politely explained how he wasn't his father or even a father figure, but he was Aunt's OP's soon-to-be husband, making him his favorite uncle. But that even though he wasn't his father, he would never abandon him and they'd always be best friends. Joe, being the nice boy that he is, laughed and grinned and said everything was all right, then dashed into the living room to play with something. I believe the problem was settled well, but my sister was not pleased and began to argue with us. My mother kept telling her to shut up, but she kept saying things like, "What's wrong with you too? How can you say no to a little kid? He sees you as a father, so you should be proud of that." I had had enough and told her that Gabriel wasn't Joe's father and that she needed to stop acting like he was because it was embarrassing. She branded me as selfish C*NT and said I was envious of her child. I just rolled my eyes, and we decided to go. She later texted me, suggesting it's better if we stay out of Joe's life for a long or we'll wind up confusing him since he doesn't realize Gabriel isn't his father. But from what I could see, he got it very well. Etta, I'm sorry, I didn't intend to imply that we're already Joe's legal guardians, but if anything happened to my sister, which we pray never happens, we'll look after him. Also, although I agree that my sister is not correct, I doubt she ever becomes aggressive. Story 2. Ada for wanting to play D&D online with headphones in. My 15-year-old boyfriend, a 34-year-old man, accuses me of being the cause of his ongoing depression since I play D&D online with headphones on. Having played D&D for a long time, with one casual homebrew campaign and one recent Curse of Strahd session, I'm not a newcomer to the game. My husband has always expressed a desire to have a big family, and we welcomed our first kid into the world last year. Following my cessation of nursing, I attempted to return to the homebrew game on a Saturday every 2 weeks until I was able to resume playing. He instantly demanded to see everyone I was playing with, as well as the location of where we were playing when I was expecting my child. When I tried to return to the game after having birth, he disliked my attendance and would often seek to delay my departure, as well as calling and interrupting the game for insignificant reasons on occasion. On Saturdays, I didn't go out to play since I was in charge of the baby's care and bedtime, while my husband went out to drink and hang out with his friends. The Strahd game started shortly after the baby's birth and was first played in our house, but it became difficult for me to concentrate on the game with the baby around, so we moved to a separate location to continue playing the game. He was still departing on time, and it seemed like he was planning to call and halt the game at some point. Even if the baby was in the care of a sitter, this is still illegal. With my headphones on, I've been playing COVID online in a different room from my computer. Normally, I arrange for the infant to be cared for by the grandparents, since I'm unable to focus on the game if I'm alone with the child, max 5 hours. Despite the fact that the game had been discontinued 2 weeks before, the group continued to communicate. I was listening to music via headphones, and my partner kept interrupting me and asking me questions, which split my focus and made me furious with him. We talked about it afterward, and he expressed his dissatisfaction with the headphones, claiming that they make him feel excluded and that they are contributing to his chronic depression. He also stated that there is no point in him seeking depression treatment if I continue to do the very thing that causes it, which is isolating myself and wearing headphones to play D&D. I attempted it again the next week, this time without headphones. However, it was so difficult for me to focus on the game, especially with him and the baby around, that I broke into tears at one point. We had just been playing for 2 hours, yet he was still unhappy. He claims that I need to adjust my expectations about how I play. Yet all I want is to be able to focus and fully immerse myself in the game as much as possible. I've tried modifying my playing hours in the past, as well as playing without headphones, but it still doesn't work. At the same time, he has grown increasingly concerned about IT security, and as a result, I am unable to use my laptop at this time. He has also reset my iPad and phone many times, and he has requested that I get a new phone number. I've also reduced my work hours at his request in order to be more available to him and his kid. Despite the fact that I was working full-time, and he is technically unemployed but still engaged in Bitcoin trading. Even though I've done all I can to accommodate him, I don't want to give up D&D or play in a less involved way since I like it and depend on it for my mental well-being. I'd wanted to visit a therapist, but I've been a jerk in the process. Update: I offered my ex an ultimatum. Either he and slash or we go to counseling or we split. And since he refused counseling because therapists typically take one person's side, I had to push the separation. He moved out 6 weeks ago, and I've been in my new house for a month now, and it's as if the fog has cleared. Life is fundamentally better in every aspect. I feel better the more time I spend away from him. I'm back to practically full-time hours, which works great for me with a toddler. I have a lot more flexibility again, and I'm going to make our house lovely for the two of us. Some of the highlights of his behavior since the separation include not packing anything at all, with over a month's notice until the final 4 hours before he had to depart. When he came to see our child at my house, he already knew where I would be living. He asked me to check out the nearest train station, bus route, and directions for him instead of figuring it out on the 3-hour journey himself. He walked into my house as if he owned it, patted the cat on my bed, raided my pantry, said he was going to take my remaining tea because I don't drink it and he does. I said no, it's for guests. And after our child was in bed, offered to cook everyone, himself, myself, and 3 friends serving as guardians, dinner out of my freezer and still-packed kitchen. While moving his belongings, I came upon a notebook of his. He did, in fact, believe I was having an affair at D&D. He reasoned that I was usually joyful after a game and that he'd seen improvements in my look and behavior, which, for the record, he had requested I do a few weeks earlier. It turns out that his definition of enough in a day is 3-5 encounters. When I was pregnant, he paid an addict down the street for he seemed to have felt awful about it. He has blamed me for working too hard in the relationship, misinterpreting his behaviors and words, including direct quotations, not hiring a therapist for him, and no longer assuming the best of him at different moments in our chats. The child, on the other hand, is doing very well. She hasn't missed his departure at all and is having a great time in her new home. Because I'm also going to make the dining room into a Dungeons and Dragons and dining room. So, thank you very much. I know a lot of you read these things for the sake of enjoyment, but thank you.